All right, so you will need to print your site plan, and it's on layers. And I mentioned that the reason we use layers is to control and categorize our information. Um, Real quick on the layers here, if I turn them off, information like this, it gives me a message. That's my current layer. Do I want to turn it off? And the answer will be yes. So I can turn layers on and off from here. That way, I don't see it. And I'll bring that back. Sorry. Let's do that there. Real quick, what I did not mention was freezing layers. So here's what happens when you freeze layers. I'll just show you real quick. I'm going to take this tree and I'm going to copy it over here, way out here like this, okay? I'll tap the escape key. Now, I'm going to type zoom extents. So Z enter, E enter. And you see how it's taking that tree into consideration. Now, if I take that layer, I turn it off. And now I do a zoom extents again. So Z enter, E enter. Notice how it is still recognizing that there's an object there. Instead of turning it off, if I freeze it, and yes, you can leave it off, it doesn't matter. If you turn it back on, it's still going to be frozen, so it's okay. When I freeze it, now when I type Z enter, E enter, notice how it is ignoring the contents. So if a layer is frozen, AutoCAD does not recognize it. So I'll bring that layer back. I'll thaw it. That's what we say, thaw it. And then I will zoom extents again. So I'll type Z enter, E enter. So there's the other tree. I will now take that, delete it. I'm done demonstrating that. And then I zoom extents again, Z enter, E enter. There we are. Just wanted to point that out to you. And then the other thing I forgot to point out is locking layers down. So I'll keep using this layer as an example. If I take that site landscape layer and I lock it, you'll notice that it changes a different shade of green here. And now if I try to copy one of these trees, if I type CO, enter, and I go to pick it, it'll tell me down at the command line that this object is on a locked layer. If I go to pick another object, notice how it also shows me that lock symbol, meaning that it's locked. So I can't pick these objects, but I can still see them on screen. So that's a really nice feature of AutoCAD and layers. So let me tap the escape key. And then I will unlock it over here. And then I don't need to zoom extents because I'm all set. All right. So I just want to point that out. I didn't get a chance to the last time we were talking about layers. So now what I'd like to do is print this out to show, you know, what progress I've made. And also, if any of you would like to print this out for yourself, if you want to print it on 8.5 by 11, because that's a printer that you have access to at home, at the library, at school, that's fine. But I'm going to print this out on 11 by 17. And usually we'll print this out so that we can kind of have access to it and then maybe sketch on top of it to see where it is that we're going to be putting our building and things like that. So let me go ahead and print out and show you how to use line weights here. So I've already done a zoom extents, which means this is what I will see. This is the extent of my drawing. And then the next thing I'm going to do is type Control P. So Control P, that takes me to the print dialog box. Print and plot mean the same thing. All right, from here, I've not set this drawing up, so let me go through that process. So the printer I'm going to select is going to be the AutoCAD General Documentation, AutoCAD PDF. So you're going to click on that. And then you're going to select the paper size. So on the paper size, go ahead and select the full bleed, and we'll go with ANSI full bleed B size, 17 by 11. So that's already formatting the sheet to landscape. Then from here, in the past, the printing, we would say zoom extents, and I'll try that, but I might change this in just a moment. And then the plot scale, I want to change that also. We never really want to print fit to paper. We always want to pick an architectural scale. So I'll click on that. Now I go to the scales. And from here, I'm going to pick a much smaller scale than I've been using before because this is a much bigger drawing. So I'll start with, say, 1/8 of an inch. And when I go with 1/8 of an inch, and by the way, I forgot to center, so let me go ahead and center it. You'll see that it's still too big. And I can do a quick preview just to prove to myself how big it is. So that's what I'm seeing so far. So I'm going to close this out. And I'll go back and make it a much smaller scale. So I'll go 1/2 of an 1/8, which is a 1/16. And now you can see that it's cropping it, or it's failing to fit on the two ends, but it looks like on the top and bottom it's doing okay. So I'll give that a preview. So this is what it looks like. Mind you, it still has colors, and I'll fix that in just a moment. But you can see how at this scale it looks like it will fit. So this might be a good scale to print out and to have available. But I'm going to close this out for a second. And I'm going to try another scale here. So I'm going to try to increase this scale to 3/32, just because I want to see if I can fill the page a little bit better. So 3/32, and then I'm going to preview that. And you can see that at 3/32, it looks like it will fit, but it's not fitting the entire property, yet there's all this space available over here. So instead of extents, watch what I'm going to do. Let me right click and exit. And there's an option here under plot area. So instead of plotting the extents, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select window. So I just want to window a certain area. So I'm going to click window. And then I'm going to click out here. And I'm going to see if I can fit maybe a little bit more, like all the way up to the corner. And let me pan this and include the tree like that. Let's see if this fits. I'll give it a click. And you can see that it looks like it will fit. So I'm going to preview this. And notice how it's giving me the line work that represents the corner, the street corner here, the sidewalks, my trees, and my property. I don't need to see all of the building portion here and the garage on the other side. This gives me a good idea of the location of my building between two other buildings. So this will work out. You don't have to do it this way. You can select any scale and window it and focus on maybe just the property if that's what you wanted to do. But just to output this to demonstrate, here's how much progress I've made. This will be good. Now, I have to set up my colors. So I'm going to close out of the print preview. And I'm going to come down here to apply to layout and click on that. So this is now locked in. Now I'm going to come up to my plot style table, and I'm going to click on the drop down. Now, I've gone ahead and created a plot style table before, but go ahead and start with monochrome for now. And I may have made changes to my monochrome settings, so we'll see. So it says assign this plot style table to all layouts. Yes, that's fine because we're printing out of model space only. So go ahead and click on yes. And then click on the icon here that allows you to edit the plot style table. So when I click on this, pause for a moment, and this window will open up. And here, let me do something. Let me close this for a moment. Let me bring this here, and then click on the editing of the plot style table. There we go. So you can see that a little bit better. All right, from here, the reason I selected monochrome is because monochrome has all of the plot styles, the colors here, set to print black, all the way from 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 255. Everything is set to print black. Now, I've used this before, so when I click on color 1 here, you're going to see that a line weight has been assigned. But if I go to the other colors that I've not used, like this, you'll see how it'll say use object line weight. If this is the first time you're using monochrome, you're going to see use object line weight for every single one of the colors. So what I'm doing is I am looking at, and let me, ooh, I can't close this. Give me a second. Let me cancel this. I'll move this over here to this side. I'll go back to my plot style table and I'll take a look at it. So here we go. All right, so you can see I'm not using color red for anything right now. So it doesn't matter what I set that to. Color number 2, this is my sidewalks. And this is the line weight that I'm using. So that's a 0.25 millimeter line thickness. If you're not sure how thick this is, it's okay. Um, as an example, anybody that's used a mechanical pencil before, they come with leads that are 0.5 millimeters thick, and then there are other leads that are 0.7 millimeter. So that should give you an idea of what the line thickness is going to be here. So I'm going to leave this at 0.25 because I want to see how this prints out. So that'll be color number 2. That's going to be for my sidewalks. And remember, what's really, really important here is my property line, and I'll get to that in just a minute. So next one is color 3. And I have color 3 set to print at 0.05 millimeter, not 0.5. It's 0.05, which means I want these to print out really thin. I have nothing assigned to color 4, so I'm going to leave that alone. Color 5, these are my buildings. I don't want those to show up as heavy either. So I'm going to click on color 5 and see what I have that set to. I have it set to 0.1. So I'll give that a try. And then color 6, this is my property line. This is what I want to be really bold when the PDF prints out. So when I click on that, you see how I have that set to a 0.6 millimeter thickness. So these are just settings that I'm using. You can go ahead and make changes as you'd like to, as long as you're getting the line weight changes, the differences. The property line has to be the boldest. And then after that, I usually like the streets and sidewalks to be represented lighter. And then after that, my buildings very light along with my trees. So this is what I'm going to leave it at, and I'm going to say save and close. And that's going to save it back to monochrome. And now I can go ahead and preview this. And when I preview, look at what I see. And I'm going to zoom in so you can get a good idea of what this is looking like. And this here is showing me all of the line weights that I have. Those are my buildings on the side. This is my property line. These are my trees, my sidewalks. So I'm okay with these line weights. But again, if you want to make changes, you're more than welcome to. But I do always recommend that you come in here and preview this and see what the difference in line weights are doing. So I'll show you one other thing because eventually we're going to be doing this anyway. I'm going to close out. And on my trees, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into my monochrome plot style table, edit that table. And then color number 3 here, I had that set to a really thin line, but I'm going to change that now, and I'm going to make it 0.1. And it's going to be similar to my buildings, but what I'm going to do is change this screening, and instead of 100%, I'm going to change that to 50. And what that will do is it will give me a half tone. So I will now save and close, and then I will apply to layout to make sure that it picks up this monochrome plot style table. And then I'll preview that. And then I'll zoom in here. And you see, the closer I get, you can really start to see that grayscale effect. And compared to the building over here, it's not competing much, although this looks like that's also grayscale. Let me check that for a minute. But this is the effect of going with that screening. So I like this effect. Gives the trees a little bit of a transparency quality, even though they're two-dimensional. And then let me close this preview out and see what I did to color number 5, which is blue. I'll go to my plot style table, color 5. There you go. See how that screening is set to 50? I'm going to change that. I'm going to let that be 100, and I'll still leave it at 0.1. I will save and close, and then I'll preview. And then I'll zoom back in over here. And now you could see the difference. Let me zoom in a little bit closer. So this is no longer halftone, but my trees are. And I'm okay with the line weights and also the halftone. And the property line is bold enough for me. My streets and sidewalks are also bold. So this looks good. So now all I will do is close. I always double check, make sure that it is applied to the layout, and then you click OK. And this will print it out. And let me just drop it onto my G drive. And let's go to the folder. So in here, remember, just eliminate or delete that suffix of model. It's just telling us it's in model space. So it should just say first initial last name and then the file name. And then go ahead and save that. You'll save it. Tells me no errors. I'll close out of that. 1 second. Okay, that's closed. And then this is what my print looks like. 1 moment. So this is what it looks like. I'm opening it up in the default browser here. So here is the file, the PDF. Let me zoom out a little bit. You can see it fit on that sheet, 11 by 17, at the scale that I requested and to the window that I had requested. And if I zoom in closer, really get in there, I can see the difference in the line weights and also how I set the color green to halftone. So I like that setting, but again, any way you would like to set it, just remember the hierarchy here, and that is that the property line has to be the boldest line on this drawing file. All right, and that's all done. Now, if you don't like what printed out or how it printed out, it's fine. You just go back to the drawing and you go Control P to print out. Sorry, 1 second. Control P. And you go ahead and edit the plot style table. This happens often. I don't want you to think that you set it once and you're done. We're always making modifications, and depending on what we're printing out, we make changes. So this will work well for my site plan. When it comes time for a floor plan, I may use the same settings. For elevations, probably the same ones. We'll see. And this is why, in my mind, I make sure that whatever colors I'm using here to represent heavy line weights versus lighter line weights, I follow that same standard when it comes time to do a floor plan and an elevation. So in the end, sometimes you'll see that you'll have one plot style table that becomes a standard, and we just set it to those line weights. So that's something to keep in mind. Let me close out of that. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, I just figured I'd take you down a little bit of history here. These are technical pens that we were using a lot of when we drew by hand, but I want you to see how these technical pens, they have those different line weights, and they're in millimeters here. So when I use a pen that's 0.25, I think of this line weight. And you'll notice here with these pens, they're also color coded on the caps and also on the collar of the pen. So when we were drawing by hand, we always knew that this beige color was going to be a thin pen. The yellow color, this was going to be our 0.3. That was a common one that we would use. And then the gray also was relatively common. And then when we were going to draw walls, if we were doing a floor plan, we would always go over here to either the brown or the red. And a few times you would end up using this orange one, which is a 1.2 when we were putting down lines that were meant to represent the ground if we were doing elevations. But this is where it's tied into. This is where AutoCAD got the idea, where color coding equals a specific line weight. And it's all set to millimeter. We're just used to that. But there is a way to switch it over to inches, but not too many people will do that. So if I can zoom in here, yeah, it does let me zoom in a little bit there. So you can see where this concept is coming from. So just giving you that little bit of history so you know where the thinking is in terms of this concept of colors equals a line thickness. And if you want, you can borrow these line thicknesses and use these exactly. And then if you want to make some modifications, like let's say you start with a 0.35, you don't like it as well as you would like it to be, the thickness on it, you can change it to 0.32 to 0.34, anything you want. So that nice fine tuning is available in AutoCAD. All right, that's all I wanted to show you there in terms of printing this out. So that's where we're going moving forward. Everything we print out, it will be layer based, and you're going to assign colors, or I'm sorry, line weights to those layers. All right, thank you very much.